Okay, this is part 2 of the ACT Form 1874 2020 practice quiz for the math section. This covers problems 11 through 20, right? And we'll break it up into different videos for each 10 problems. So there should be 6 total videos when we're all said and done. The first one is already posted, and I will link that and the entire playlist in the description below. In addition, I will post this link that you see at the bottom. This is where the practice questions came from. It's the official ACT preparing for the ACT guide. So that will help you out with all of your classes and contains a couple of practice tests for you to try. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so problem number 11 is asking you to find the slope of the line that goes through -2, 1 and 2, -5. Okay, so to remind you about the slope formula, what it says is to subtract the y values on the top of the fraction, okay, and then subtract the x values on the bottom of the fraction, okay. And so in this case, my y values are the 1 and the -5. It doesn't matter in which order you place them. So if I say -5 minus 1, that will be fine. But if I flipped it, that would also be fine as long as I'm consistent. Since I made the decision to start with the -5, when I move on to my x values for the denominator, I have to start with the 2, which comes from the same coordinate pair. So I'm going to say 2 minus -2, okay? And so that's going to be, it looks like -6 on the top, and it looks like I'm going to get a +4 when I add, right? So that would be a +4, and that would be -3/2, right? And that's choice letter D, okay? All right, second problem is saying in Cherokee County, the fine for speeding is $17. Okay, for each mile per hour the driver is traveling over the speed limit. Kirk was fined $221 for a road that was posted with a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And the question is, what speed was he traveling when he got the ticket? Okay, so what we're going to do here is take his total amount of money, which is $221. Okay, and we're going to divide that by the fact that he's being charged $17 for each one. And what we find out in that case is if I do this, that it's 13, which is the number of miles per hour he was traveling over the speed limit. So if they ask what his total speed was, it's going to be the 30 miles that he was allowed to travel plus the 13 that he was over the speed limit. And if I put those together, I find out that he was traveling 43 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone. Problem number 13. What is the sum of the solutions of the two equations below? So remember, the word sum just means we're going to add. Okay, so we're going to add the solutions for these two equations. So for the first one, if I solve this one just by dividing both sides by 8, okay, what we're going to find is if I do 8x equals 12, I'll just pull that one over here, and I divide both sides by this 8, okay, what I'm going to find out is that x is equal to, okay, 12 over 8, which I can reduce because they both have 4s in them, to 3/2. Okay, so x is 3/2, and then I can do the same thing with y. I'm going to start by subtracting 10 from both sides, right? And that means that I'm going to say that 2y is equal to 12, and then I can say y is equal to 6 when I divide both sides by 2. So it looks like I need to add a 6 and a 3/2, right? Well, if you remember, 3/2 is the same as a mixed number as 1 and 1/2. So if I do 6 plus 1, I get 7, and that extra half would make letter B 7.5. Okay, so that would be the answer for 13 is 7.5. All right, 14 is saying that the 5 distinct scores, the average of 5 distinct scores has the same value as the median of the 5 scores. The sum of the 5 scores is 420. What is the sum of the 4 scores that are not the median? Okay, so let's do a little vocabulary check here before we get into doing the actual problem. So the word average means that we added up the values and we divided by the number of scores, right? So it's sum, okay, over number of items. Okay, that's how we find average. Okay, and the median is just going to be the middle. Okay, so what they're claiming is that if you calculated, right, the average of the number of items, that was the same number as if you just made a list of the numbers and figured out which number was in the middle of the list when the numbers are in order from smallest to largest, right? So for example, if I had the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, these were my 5 values, I would say 4 is the middle value, so 4 is the median, right? So what they're claiming is that these two, whatever these scores are for that we use to calculate the average, that the median and the average are the same, right? And so what we're going to do to figure out what that same value is to actually find the average, right? If they tell us that the sum of the 5 scores is 420, what I know is that the top of this calculation is 420, right? And the number of items, we know there are 5 distinct scores, right? So I can just say 420 divided by 5. Let me just bring up my calculator real quick, see if it's working. Oh, it's not working. Okay, so we'll just do without. You won't be able to see it. So 420 divided by 5. Okay. Looks like 84, right? So this is going to come out to be an 84. So what they're claiming is that the average and the median of these 5 scores is an 84. Okay, and what they're asking you to do is, what is the sum of the 4 scores that are not the median, right? So that means that we need to take the 84 out away from the sum, which is 420, right? So if we do 420 minus 84, we're going to get 336, right? And that is going to be the answer to the question, okay? All right, problem number 15, it says, what is the value of the expression below? Right, these bars are absolute value, right? And what absolute value essentially does, they are grouping symbols. So when we're doing our good friend PEMDAS, right, they are treated just like parentheses. We are always going to do those first. So I'm just going to do what's inside of each of these most inner parentheses, right? Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4, right? So there's bars on either side of that. And then 3 minus 9 is negative 6, okay? So that's our kind of like inside ones. I like color coding. This represents the outside ones, right? And so what we're going to do here is take the absolute value of negative 4, which is 4. We're going to take the absolute value of negative 6, which is 6. We're going to do 4 minus 6 inside of these much more outer grouping symbols, and that would make it then the absolute value of negative 2. And the answer to that is just 2, right? So remember, absolute value is about the distance from 0, and it will always be a positive number. Okay. All right, problem number 16. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x to the 2/3 power? Okay, so here's the way that fraction exponents work, right? If I have something like x to the 1/3 power, what this 1/3 means, okay, is that the square root that has an index of the denominator here. So that was a lot of vocabulary. So let's talk about what that means. Right. So if I have a 1/3, right, what I'm actually saying is that if I write this with a square root, okay, and this base is on the inside of that symbol, I'm going to say that there's going to be a little number on the outside right here, and that number will always be the denominator of the fraction. So I'm going to tuck a little 3, okay, into that space. And so what the x to the 1/3 means is the cube root of x, right? So if I did something like x to the 1/6, okay, it would be the same thing. I would set up a radical symbol with the base on the inside, and then I would tuck a little 6 in here. This would be the 6th root of x, right? So we can kind of look at the answers here and see that there are 2 of them, okay, that have the cube root symbol, okay? And so we have to decide then, how are we going to deal with this 2 that's on the top? Well, here's how the 2 works. If I change the numerator of this to 2, okay, what that really means is that I'm going to have either this setup where it's the cube root of x squared, or I could have the same thing. I could have the cube root of, on the inside, x squared, okay? And the reason for this, okay, if you want to understand the concept, is x to the 2/3, right, is the same as x squared to the 1/3, okay, which is the same thing as x to the 1/3 squared, right? These all mean the same thing. I'm splitting up the 2 and the 3 in this fraction either in 2 times 1/3 or 1/3 times 2, right? So any of these work, which means if I look at this one, that would be the same as having the squared on the inside of the radical. If I look at this one, it just means having x on the inside of the radical and then squaring it on the outside, right? So they all kind of mean the same thing. You get the same answer from all of them, but this is the one that shows up on our list, right? So choice K is the answer we're going to go with, okay? All right, problem number 17. What is the slope of the line given by this equation? Okay, so if you remember, slope is in equation form, we like our equations to look like y equals mx plus b. Okay, so we're going to say that this is the same as y. We want it to look like y equals mx plus b. Okay, and so we need to rewrite this equation to be a y equals, right? So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to subtract the 5 over to the left, right? So it's going to say 4x minus 5 is equal to 7y, okay? And then I'm going to divide everything by 7, right? And so I'll get my y equals, okay? And then I'm going to get a minus 5/7, but I don't really care about that. And I'm going to get a 4/7 x, okay? And so I really just care about this number that is in front of x. That is the slope, right? mx plus b. The m value is the slope. So we're going to say in this case a positive 4/7, okay? Problem number 18. Which of the following conditions will the sum of the integers m and n always be an odd integer? Okay, so they're giving us a bunch of different options about whether m is odd, n is odd, both are even, right? So the best way to answer this type of question is just to give yourself a simple example. So if I were to say m is an odd integer, so for example, m is equal to 3. If I say m plus n, right, they want us to do the sum of m and n, right? If I say 3 plus 2, right, well, that's going to give me an odd integer. That's good. But if I made n a 1, then it would say 3 plus 1, and that would be a 4. That's not an odd integer. So m can't be odd by itself, and for the same reason, n can't be odd by itself, okay? So now the question is, well, can I have them both be odd or both be even? Well, let's try. Well, right now I have m as being odd and n as being even, and I'm getting an odd answer, right? But if I had m as being even, right, and n as also being even, it looks like I'm getting an even answer, right? If it says m is odd and n is even, I'm sorry, both of them are odd. So for example, 3 plus 11, right, I'm getting 14, and that's even, right? So you can see that this is the only combination, one odd number and one even number, that is going to give me an odd sum. Everything else looks like it gives me an even sum, so we're going to go with choice letter K. Right? Next problem. It says the length of two legs of a right triangle are shown below, right? 32 and 24. And it's saying the midpoint of AB is how many inches from point A, which is this point up here. Okay? So the way we're going to figure that out is we need to know how long AB is, right? AB, here's a little vocabulary for you, is the hypotenuse of this right triangle. 32 and 24 are legs, right? AB is the hypotenuse. So what we're going to do is we're going to say 32, or if we use the Pythagorean theorem, we can say a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, right? Where the hypotenuse is c and the legs, whichever way you want to do it, are a and b. Okay, so I'm going to say that 32 squared plus 24 squared is equal to c squared. Okay, and if you add these two together, if you go to your calculator and you type in 32 squared plus 24 squared, you get 1600 is equal to c squared. And then we just want to square root both sides. So if you take the square root of 1600, you get 40 for the value of c. Right? And so what that means is that this AB length is going to be 40 total. Well, the midpoint, it says the midpoint of AB is how many inches from A. Well, the midpoint is halfway between A and B, and that's going to split this 40 up into a 20 and a 20. Okay? So I'm going to say 20 is going to be the distance that A is from this middle point. Okay? So that would be choice letter B. Okay? All right, last problem for this video. It says in triangle DEF, the length of DE is the square root of 30 inches, and the length of EF is 3 inches. If it can be determined, what is the length in inches of segment DF? Okay, so let's just draw this real quick, and then we'll talk about why we cannot determine based on this information what the length of DF is. Okay, if I draw a triangle, DEF, okay, however you want to draw it, okay, and I know that DE is root 30, and I know that EF is 3, right? And I want to know what DF is. The only ways that I could know what the value of DF is either if we also knew that we had a right angle. So, for example, if they said in triangle DEF, all of this information and E is a right angle, well, then I can calculate DF. Or they could use, say, F is a right angle or anything else. Okay, you could also, if you had a third piece of information about any of the angles, like if you knew that, angle E was 30 degrees, right? There's possible ways to do that. But only knowing two sides is not enough information in order for us to figure out what the third side is, unless they also tell us something about one of the angles. So in this case, not enough information is given for us to be able to figure out the length of DF.